welcome to the Bitcoin Business Podcast put on by Sovereign. I'm your host, Brandon Karplus. And today I have with me two guests. This is the first ever Bitcoin Business Podcast with two guests. So we're breaking some new ground here. I hope it'll be great. It's not because I haven't wanted to have multiple guests on or I'm opposed to the format or anything, just kind of been that way. We had a couple scheduled for multiple guests, but the other guest ended up canceling. So here we are, the first triumvirate pod. And today with me, I have Stu Lackey and Jon Gordon from Sound HSA. And Jon and I met, probably like 4 or 5 years ago, and then really got reconnected the past year or so as Jon came back to Chicago. Sorry, Jon, if I doxed you on that, but I'm pretty sure everyone
All
knows
good.
that knows you knows where you're at. So
hmm
you guys are undertaking something that is part of what we're focusing on at Sovereign when we go into these companies and talk to them is, okay, you bought some Bitcoin, you're accepting it as payment, maybe you're paying a vendor or two in Bitcoin. That's all well and good, but now how do you start integrating it into your business? What options are out there? How do you give your employees benefits? How do you give your employees opportunities? If you as a business owner understand Bitcoin, the odds are 90% of your staff or 99% of your staff doesn't understand Bitcoin. So how do you kind of provide some incentives to nudge them in a way to start understanding Bitcoin but also at the same time providing really cool products and offerings to them that they're going to be very happy they signed up for. And typically in the fiat world, we have all these different programs, 401ks, 529s, pick your acronym or numbered, whatever. And there's just no Bitcoin option in it. And so it's going to take people in this space, builders, people who understand these specific things. I had Scott Deedles on here. He was talking specifically about retirement accounts because he has an expertise in that area. He knows retirement accounts inside, outside, how to get it done, how to establish it. And so today we're going to be talking about HSAs with Jon and Stu of Sound HSA. And so, Jon, Stu, first of all, thank you for joining us. Stu, why don't we start with
Good to
you,
be
and
here.
then we'll go to Jon. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in the high flying world of HSAs.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, a little bit of history on me. So I've spent most of my professional career in the healthcare space, launching and scaling surgical device companies. So think about the hips and knees and spinal implants that you hear about. My teams and my companies are in the operating room helping surgeons and those techs look like rock stars so they can help their patients. So enjoyed a long career in that space and found Bitcoin in 2016. I'd left a startup and was invited to a meetup and just had a window in my life. And I think this is true for most Bitcoiners who find it. You have to have a window to be open to it, right? Where you have the headspace to devote to the study. And so that's launched me on a decade long discovery and understanding of the technology. In 2020, when Michael Saylor started putting Bitcoin on Strategy's balance sheet, it really made me think, okay, are there other ways that I can leverage and not leverage from a derivative standpoint, but maximize Bitcoin in terms of my own personal holdings and accumulation. And so I started looking at defined contribution accounts. So Bitcoin IRAs had been around at that time for probably 5 or 6 years. And now those have proliferated, but there was really no Bitcoin HSA. But you could hold proxies in an HSA through Fidelity. And so that's what I did. We started exposing some of our HSA funds. My wife and I had HSAs, for the better part of our marriage for a long time. And so we started putting funds into Bitcoin exposure, but it wasn't real Bitcoin. And so a few years ago, I had the
Did the
idea
same.
of like,
So yeah,
what's
I
that?
did the same. Yeah,
Yeah, and a lot of
paper
people have
Bitcoin.
done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people have done that just to get exposure. But in 2022, I had the thought, you know what? Someone needs to commercialize and offer up a product that allows uh, individuals and families to custody Bitcoin within a health savings account as a long-term saving strategy. I know we'll get into how the accounts work and how to use them. Um, but there needed that product needed to exist and it didn't. And so the regulatory environment really wasn't such that we could do it a few years ago. John and I got connected over a year ago, got aligned on what we think the potential is for Bitcoin at the intersection of healthcare and wellness. And we stood up Sound HSA over a year ago, just over a year ago. And it's been an incredible journey. And we think that this product has the potential to impact millions of people in the US to help optimize Bitcoin exposure and long term savings. So, a little bit about me.
You have, just along those lines, John, sorry, before you go, do you have any idea how many people in the US hold an HSA today? Do you know that number?
Absolutely. We have moved and quickly, but based on market research, and there's some good sources. There's about 40 million HSA accounts,
Wow.
and the interesting thing is those are divided up between the employer population. Most people access their HSAs at least originally through an employer benefit plan. But the really cool thing is there's about 40% of the market that are open market HSAs. Either they've been self created and self-directed or they've been transferred or rolled over from an employer-based HSA. And so it's a really important distinction.
Thank you. All right,
Yeah.
John. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, all good. Yeah, and really, the health savings account is the perfect vehicle to hold Bitcoin, right? Because you're saving long term, you're storing that value for any uncertainty you have in the future. And my background, like Stu, I worked in the healthcare industry across doing strategy consulting for hospitals and health systems. I worked in the payer space, was in Medicaid at one of the big Blues plans. I was in the medical supplies arena where Stu and I crossed paths a little bit, getting in the OR, getting and helping new products get implemented. And ultimately in 2020, also when COVID hit, I was completing a double master's in health economics and policy, and I'd been studying health systems around the world and trying to understand um, how is healthcare paid for, what are the outcomes, and what are the trade-offs, because there's no perfect healthcare system. A lot of countries the government pays a lot more, some countries they pay less. Here we have some choice in the US, right? But it's still a market very much dominated by third-party payers. Right? 90% of healthcare spend is either by the government or health insurance companies. Only 10% is individually directed or out of pocket. So when I started just asking the question, what is money, during COVID, and going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, it really clicked for me pretty quickly and realizing that, hey, we need to bring Bitcoin into healthcare. This is a $5 trillion a year industry in the US alone, where a quarter of that spend is administrative, half of that is waste. We're seeing all the fraud that's coming out as well. $2 trillion a year between Medicare and Medicaid and on the government spend side. So this is a major allocation, and we're all human. We all have our health circumstances and our own personal desires to either improve our health and lifespan for ourselves and those around us. So really in 2022, started looking around, and after doing a yoga teacher training and saying, hey, where can I work in Bitcoin and healthcare? And at the time, Crowd Health was the only company working in the space. So I worked for Crowd Health for a while, helping a lot of Bitcoiners get set up over there, and then started my own consulting business. And I think that's Brandon, when we crossed paths, and I'm sure I have a lot of similar stories in this, which is going to businesses. And for me, I was focused a lot and still have been helping doctors and dentists and even architects. And you talk
Yeah.
to Brian and other businesses to just integrate a Bitcoin strategy, start planting the flag, accept Bitcoin as payment, save in Bitcoin, market to Bitcoiners, and finding your customer base. And so I was really in a good position then when Stu and I got connected, and having experience on the merchant side, on the supply, to say, well, where now do we have the demand? Where do we have Bitcoiners and people who have value saved that they can now go and spend at the doctor or for their sauna or on their beef or the red light glasses that you're wearing, right? All these things are potentially or very explicitly health savings account eligible, right? These are medical or health, wellness goods and services that now you can spend without taxes, right? And get into how the HSA works, but it's the only self-directed account in the US that is triple tax advantaged. And so that is, for me, it's kind of what Stu is like, this product needs to live, it needs to exist. We think it can really help a lot of people, and everyone's in a different personal situation and or employer situation, but ultimately it's a vehicle you can bring with you beyond your employer relationship and try to build over time to create that the life that you want to live, and spend value on health that you find valuable, not some other third party finds valuable.
So why don't you explain the triple tax benefit, which just means
Yeah,
if you're not doing this, you're getting taxed 3 times, and it's very
sure.
depressing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I I can take that one. Yeah. So the HSA works in three ways. You can have a situation through your employer where you contribute funds pre-tax. Employers can choose to match a portion, and theoretically, an employer could contribute the entire allowable contribution. The HSA is a defined contribution account like the IRA. There are no income requirements, though, to contribute to an HSA. The only thing that's required for most people is that you're tied to a high deductible health plan. And most employers now in the US offer at least a high deductible health plan option. Maybe they have a PPO option as well. So if you're through your employer, you do it pre tax. After that, all the gains that an HSA might experience are tax free in perpetuity. And so most funds and HSAs still in the US are parked in cash or a very limited investment option. So many of your viewers or listeners might say, well, I've got a menu of 10 ETFs or mutual fund, combinations that I can invest to based on my risk profile. And so some of those have graduated to be associated and directly connected to trading desks like Fidelity or Schwab. Okay. But even there's some limited options. And so the gains on the tax are on the account are tax free. When you withdraw from your HSA for eligible health care goods and services, those spends are tax free as well. Okay. So that's where the triple tax advantage comes from. Here's the cool thing though. At age 65, the HSA becomes ostensibly a traditional IRA. You can spend it on anything. It's just taxed at your ordinary income rate on your withdrawals. Okay, so there's no penalty for using it for a child or grandchild's college education if you choose to do that. Um, you can also take the balance of the HSA, and as long as you've saved your receipts through the lifetime of the account, you can reimburse yourself out of the account tax free. So people think about Bitcoin, okay, no capital gains. It becomes a traditional IRA taxed only at my ordinary income rate. And I can reimburse myself tax free in perpetuity. It becomes a really exciting product to pair with Bitcoin. And so that's again, those are some additional ways that you can use the account. One more point is, unlike a traditional IRA, there are no mandatory withdrawals, which is huge in the life of the account, so long as the individual or spouse is living. So that's a huge opportunity to have further benefit down the road.
it's it. I was shocked actually when I went and looked up how many items are eligible for HSA payment. I couldn't believe it. I felt like a
Yeah.
sucker though because just I had spent so much time not. I'm like, why wouldn't I just put? I have an allotted amount of expenses for this stuff. Why wouldn't I just set the money aside into this
Yeah.
account and pay for it? But I mean, it is truly incredible. And then there's some weird
Mhm.
stuff that's not included, like toothpaste. I don't think is included, or something
Right.
weird like that. But you know, these
Yeah.
blue
The
light glasses probably are included. So I don't know.
the
It's
the
with all
list.
government systems. Some things don't make sense.
Yeah, the list, the last point I'll make on the list of eligible expenses has expanded tremendously over the decades, and the IRS looks at that every year. And so things like you said 10 years ago that weren't eligible are now eligible expenses, which is great. And John made the earlier point around medical necessity. If you have a physician, a specific condition, and the physician deems that you need, some type of wellness or preventative or, infrared sauna, for example, to help with a medical condition, they can write a letter of medical necessity. We always, defer to the physician on those types of decisions in each individual. So we don't make, spend advice in terms of those types of expenses. But it is nice to know that the list has expanded.
I mean, I would encourage people if you have an HSA or you're thinking about joining one because of the benefits that were just named here. It is an incredible tool. My wife was actually much better at this. I'm just like left side of the bell curve Neanderthal. I'm just like buy more Bitcoin, buy more Bitcoin. I didn't do any quality planning around it, but my wife actually did, and so she's done a great job of taking advantage of these things and getting some Bitcoin exposure. She's halfway through the enrollment process with Sound HSA, but we'll get her 100% of the way all the way through. But it really is a great tool for people that are on top of this stuff that want some additional autonomy and benefits over their personal medical expenses. I mean, I'm a Crowd Health member as well. John, I don't know if you still are or not, but or Stu if you are, but you really going on it really forces you to going on Crowd Health, leaving a sort of employer plan really forces you to take stock and take more autonomy of your medical finances and those sorts of things. Something I just didn't really look at or care about because someone else was paying. You know, as you said earlier, 90% of all payments are coming from the government or your insurance provider. And that was me. I just kind of outsourced everything. Um, it was left to someone else. But the great thing about these products and these offerings is not only do you get the benefit of being able to save in Bitcoin and the benefits that come with that, but you also instill some discipline on yourself and you allow yourself the ability to get even more personal autonomy over in this case your medical finances and how you save and plan for your family's future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And at least in my case, I still have the family on Crowd Health. And what I did is signed up for my own high deductible health plan just through the marketplace here in Illinois, the cheapest plan I could get. I don't really have intentions of using it, but I'm eligible for the HSA, and I really value now getting Bitcoin, especially at these price levels, getting even a few million sats, right? For an individual, you can contribute up to $4,400 a year. So even, modest amount of sats right now, I think in 20, 30 years, if I need a new hip or a knee, the government's not going to be around to pay for it. Or if they are paying for it, what they do is every year they pay less and less, and you're getting lower quality service. And if you want high quality service, you pay a fair price. And so I think that discipline, as you mentioned, and really just having consumers in healthcare saying, what is the price? What is a fair price for an x-ray? Or what should it cost to have a relationship with a doctor on a monthly basis and have them really get to know me and my nuances and what will benefit my health, maybe in a more holistic way than just pushing pills on me. And so I think that in such a big industry here, we need many solutions, and it'll be a mix and match of what works best for people, and whether you're with your spouse situation or employer situation. But there are ways to combine, I think, these tools in a way that make it really powerful. And one big thing on the HSA front this year that's now eligible as part of the big beautiful bill is direct primary care. And this is a business model in healthcare that's really taken off over the last few years, particularly with a company called Hint Health. They have software used by thousands of clinics across the country that enable membership and billing directly. And now some of the doctors and clinicians, what they're talking about is super aligned with Bitcoin, but they haven't taken the step yet and realized, oh, I could even remove 3%, or in healthcare, 6 to 10% of every transaction can now go to zero or towards zero in the Lightning Network. And with the big beautiful bill, you can spend your HSA directly on direct primary care, and that's an eligible expense. So maybe you're paying $100 a month, and you have this relationship with the doctor, and you can save that receipt and reimburse yourself into the future, and you're bettering your health right now. And because of the way that the HSA was instantiated, and it was in 2003, it has had this tie to health plans and considered this membership to DPC to be a health plan when it's not. It's not insurance. I have a doctor I can go to and call pretty much 24/7 and deal with things that might come up for me or my family. And so we're really leaning into that community as well in healthcare and trying to educate on Bitcoin and all the different ways that we can use it to create this better healthcare system.
Yeah, $4,400 in an HSA today, like 20, 30 years from now, you just buy the hospital, so.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
do you, along those lines of sort of, I know you're doing stuff and educating doctors and dentists and those sort of people. Do you provide services well for individuals? Because one of the things that I felt like when I had my employer insurance and even my wife had it, it was so confusing. I like open enrollment. I didn't even know what I was clicking on. I was like a
Yeah.
PPO, PHO, PSO, PCA, and some of these things don't even exist anymore. I was like, well, that plan's gone. Now what do I, now I have to do this plan, and is this
Right.
deductible better? And here's 40% of this, and say like it was so overwhelming. I was just like, I mean, I basically had to be dead to go into the doctor. And so I just like, I didn't utilize anything. I didn't do anything. And maybe that was a good decision anyways. But I just felt so overwhelmed by everything that I couldn't even really formulate like a plan. Like for
Hmm.
it's crazy because going on to joining Crowd Health and going to cash pay has actually made things very easy for me because it's just like, okay,
Hmm.
this dentist appointment's going to cost $150. All right, I'll just pay $150 or like,
Hmm.
and then when I go into the doctor, be like, I'm not insured. So what's this visit going to cost? And they have to give
Hmm.
you a cost. It's like magical. All this stuff works. But when you're still on an employer plan, and there's reasons to have it, and there's good benefits to those things as well, even though the system itself may be completely broken. Do you guys offer sort of counseling or advisory services for individuals and families as well?
Well, I will say first and foremost, we are an educational company, and so through through podcasts like this and webinars, and we're launching our own series, we'll continue to offer educational content to our customers and to anyone really trying to understand how to maximize their their HSA as a part of a high deductible health plan scenario. We have I would say a fairly extensive FAQ um, library on our website that's continually updated. And then John and I got aligned on this too. Is customers come on board, we spend a tremendous amount of time handholding because we want to make sure that the user experience is first class, that people feel like there are no questions. And really, that's one of the biggest friction points in the existing self directed market. You may know this if you're rolling over or creating a self directed IRA, or in this case, an HSA. If you're transferring funds from an existing institution, it can be a really painful process. Or if you're opening an account and it's not through your employer, which can be challenging in and of itself, but an open market self-directed account can be a very manual process, and we've automated a lot of that. We walk our customers through that entire onboarding process, and we believe the user experience, the user interface with Sound HSA is best in class. And so we'll continue to look for opportunities to educate, inform our clients as they evaluate our platform and come on board as customers. But yeah, education is huge because there is a lot of unknowns around how to maximize the account, and quite honestly, in a perfect world, you never use your HSA. You continue to spend out of pocket and save those receipts, and we can talk about that piece of it too. And then later reimburse yourself, from the growth in the account over time. So yeah, those are things that are really important to us.
Yeah, that sounds so appealing. Like just to be able to sit on your Bitcoin and not have to liquidate it or sell it and just let it grow, grow, grow. Because I mean, I don't know. There's just so many stories of myself included, like paying for something on Fold, and now the rewards are worth more than the item I purchased. Like, it's the same thing. It's just your cost of whatever contact solution or knee brace or whatever you bought today, 10 years from now that thing's basically going to be free, and you'll not
Yeah.
have had to liquidate anything at the time, and then you won't have to look back and go, oh my gosh, that was a 1 Bitcoin knee brace I bought in 2013. And
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
that is super appealing. But um where I was gonna, sorry, I just kind of went on my own little tangent there. But what I was thinking of when you were talking about the hand holding and helping people and the user experience being first class, it's I,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't need to tell you guys obviously the big hype is OpenClaw and AI, and you're just going to outsource
Mhm.
everything to your agent and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
that will definitely be true. But as we found at Sovereign, even telling
Mhm.
people we have a DIY thing, you can do it on our website. We have it for you. You can plug it into
Mhm.
AI. I mean, if you go into ChatGPT and ask how to get set up with a Bitcoin wallet, where to, like, it'll tell you all these things. But there's something about human interaction and human connection where people trust other individuals and they don't want to do it themselves. They're willing to pay a premium to be taken care
Mhm.
of, to it's something more. I don't know. I got to drill down into the psychological ideas
Yeah.
behind it, but it's something more than just paying for value add. It's a human connection, a feeling like you're a part of something, you're being taken through something, you're being cared for by someone else. It's
Mhm.
it's it's more than just I'm paying for a service. It's something that I don't think the AI agents, your bots, or whatever are ever going to be able to reproduce. And yes, some portion of society is just going to say, "I don't care. I'm outsourcing this to an internet service or an AI bot because financially it makes more sense. It'll be faster." Blah 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 blah. But there's I
Mhm.
still think there's a huge portion of society that wants the human connection, wants the being taken care of, and there is value added to those services.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the human connection is huge, especially as you're starting your journey in Bitcoin. And there's a lot of places where you can, put your foot on the stove or put your hand on the
Or your
stove
foot.
or, make mistakes. And so that's where certainly where I've been helping companies now and definitely taking that individual approach where a lot of our first customers, we've hopped on the phone and walked through onboarding, answered any questions, and we're happy to do that whenever people need or have questions on their own, personal situation. The onboarding is 6 steps. It's pretty quick. And so someone you easily could go on and go through the onboarding process yourself. But I think to your point, it's this it's been purposefully confusing, not only the health insurance space and the plans have are overly complex, but then even just understanding how an HSA works and avoiding any pitfalls and ensuring you're eligible and whatnot moving forward. So having just some guidance along the way and talking to a real human, we definitely value that, and the AI tools will certainly have their place. But having that connection, and then there are even certain actions that do still need a human touch, particularly around our product here in terms of as Stu was mentioning the transfers, right? But getting your money from a legacy institution, whether that's an HSA bank or Health Equity or Fidelity, it often requires just hopping on the phone, and that's where our setup and with our partner. So we're partnering with Horizon Trust, which is a trust company based out of New Mexico that has thousands of other self-directed accounts, mostly in the IRA space, also HSA, and they were open to this idea of really having real Bitcoin right in the HSA. But Horizon is super helpful along the way of if you are transferring a balance right, from another institution and we need to hop on the phone and make things happen, or we need to do a 2FA, make sure when we're sending money anywhere, when we're withdrawing that, that is you and that this is indeed the decision you want to make. That customer service element is really important and often has been lacking in legacy banks and trust institutions, right? And so what we've done is we've created a more seamless onboarding in a very typically PDF, driven process where you can digitally sign things and we can, yes, you need to go through KYC, but let's make that process really easy for you. And you can pay in Bitcoin and you can get a discount if you pay in Bitcoin, right? And all these things that we're doing on the web app and then with our mobile app and really wanting to create that mobile experience. Okay, I want to check my balance on the go, or maybe I'll want to upload a receipt on the go and making that easy for people. Um, and so as we're building really for Bitcoiners, it's okay, we've got real Bitcoin in these accounts, right? And in our initial setup, we have Digital Trust, which is the company behind BitcoinIRA.com, which Stu has mentioned. It's been on the market for over 10 years. Ultimately, it's BitGo on the back end. You have a sub account, boom, here's your Bitcoin, right? This is real Bitcoin. This isn't a ETF. This isn't a wrapper. And I think over time, we'll continue to move towards areas where people can, where we have even people could custody like an Unchained is doing, right? With a collaborative custody, for example. HSA balances are typically lower to start, right? So we'll need Bitcoin to grow. We'll need those balances to grow over time. We mentioned the contribution limits, but as that continues to become an option or people demand it, it's like, hey, let's, I want to hold my keys and even spend in Bitcoin out of the account, which is also something that we believe we can enable down the road. So a lot of opportunities here to really innovate because unlike the IRA, which kind of sits there for decades, there's not that much to do with it as it is in your day-to-day life and what you eat and how you move and your life patterns and your lifestyle. Health comes up all the time and it's going to continue to come up all the time, and how you spend your value or what you're saving and spending on, that's really going to drive an improvement in your life. Like these are things everyone's dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So being able to connect with Bitcoiners or Bitcoin doctor and having those conversations, then you can, orient yourself. And ultimately, if you need the money now, you need to withdraw, great. All right, go for it. But if you can save it and let it sit in Bitcoin, even better, right? So everyone's going to have their own situation and find ways to optimize it moving forward.
Use your AI bot to save the receipts, not to plan all your HSA stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Exactly.
okay, so it's custodied with Bitco right now. Is that correct? The Bitcoin sits with Bitco. So is there anything precluding someone from having self custody of their Bitcoin, or is it that just a kind of feature that isn't here yet as we launch? Are there any legal hurdles to self custodying the Bitcoin?
The HSA is legislated pretty similar to an IRA. Something that is pretty clear is that you can't have an in-kind kind of seeding of the account. So you do need to have fiat in and then buy Bitcoin within the account. And then when it comes to custody, there are opportunities to do collaborative multi-sig, the McNulty rule, and other options where people could have more access to their actual funds. Like this wasn't physically possible before with a digital asset like Bitcoin. So I think we're very much treading new ground on what is possible and what's compliant. First and foremost is about what's important, and then also what's technically possible with Bitcoin, and then marrying those two together, and over time, building that into our product is really how we see this progressing. The best thing right now is like, hey, let's just get fiat in and buy Bitcoin, especially at this, bear market. It's a great time to be building and getting some triple tax advantage sats. And then, okay, as we look to spend it, let's see what the regulation and how we can position both the custody situation and spending to best enable user experience, really creating value. A lot of HSAs have debit cards, right? And to go and spend, but is it really a great use to go, okay, I'm going to spend the $50 at the pharmacy right now. It's maybe really easy. I just want to tap the card for certain expenses. But if you have a surgery coming up or something else and you need a bigger expense, I just need, an ACH withdrawal, and that's fine too. So, but using Bitcoin in a creative way, and we've seen a lot of interesting products, coming out on the market on, outside of the retirement accounts, whether it's Bitcoin rewards credit cards or now the Bitcoin lines of credit and other ways. So we'll definitely see what are the best ways that we can really play within the rules of here's what the IRS has designated on the HSA, combined with all the amazing aspects of having digitally native money that can move at the speed of light for a fraction of a penny cost, right? So it's it's a totally new design and play space that we get to build in, which is
Yeah,
fun.
that's one of the things that's so cool about working at Sovereign is not all of us have everything figured out, but we kind of just started, like we're like in Iowa headed to Oregon, on the Oregon Trail here. So I'm sure we'll have some Indian attacks along the way, and some dysentery and some other diseases, but you have to get started. You just have to start making these things. You
Yeah.
have to start building them, and then a lot of things will shift into place, come into place, and refining your product as well to be able to iterate
Mhm.
on stuff and getting the best user experience. Because at the end of the day, I mean, let's be honest, right? Like the biggest hurdle to Bitcoin is education, just ignorance about it. But once you understand it, to me, the second biggest hurdle is just UX. It's I have to get a wallet,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
never used one of these before. And scan a
Mhm.
QR code. How do I create an invoice for what? Do I do it in dollar? It's
Yeah.
just making. I always joke that we need to get to a point where my dad can just pick up a phone and use everything, and then we've succeeded. So, but
Yeah.
we're not going to do
Yeah.
that without trying over and over again and figuring this stuff out along the way. So,
Yeah, the user experience is a huge thing. And when I came into the space, the first wallet I interacted with was Coinbase's mobile wallet, and then a couple other exchanges. And that was what I first said. I'm like, God, this is awful. I mean, no offense to the early pioneers. We need thank God for their work, right? But yeah, I was like, there's an opportunity, right? Because most people are not going to be able to confidently engage with the UX that existed at that time. And so thankfully it is steadily improved. And that's one thing that was really important to us. It's like, let's keep this clean. You mentioned Fold a minute ago. Look what Fold has come back to in their UX. It's it is simple again, right? And I
yeah,
love Will. Those guys. I mean, I was an early user, continue to use their services, but I think they did a service to their customers by cleaning up that experience. And I think it looks great. And so, we'll always be wedded to that, is to try to, like, don't overcomplicate this. Let's give it a form factor that people can use. Let's provide the services that will help our customers have an even better experience, and hold true to that.
Yeah, and I'll add we're really building at this intersection of sound money and sound health. And you mentioned the mobile wallets and making the user experience really easy, particularly with Lightning. That was really important for us, and have an exciting announcement in our 1.0 release of our mobile app that we have a self-custodial Lightning wallet, which is separate from the HSA. So this is not within your HSA balance, but outside the HSA, we've integrated the Breeze SDK. And so now for our move to earn challenges, right, where you can earn sats for steps, you can very easily create a wallet in the Sound HSA app and receive sats right there. You'll get your 12-word seed phrase. And it's really amazing how the tools have continued to improve, that we can bring people into an experience. Maybe they don't care that much about Bitcoin, but they want to earn some free money, and they're moving their body. So now, okay, I'll get set up with the wallet here, direct my sats here. It's something companies could provide to employees on the wellness front. Something we can do and plan to do at conferences, other activations, just ways, how can we educate people on Bitcoin? And even before maybe you feel like you have the value, or oh, it's risky for me to be saving Bitcoin, for my health long term. What happens with the volatility? Well, it's okay. At least play with it, experience it right now. Outside of this, what's feeling like maybe a more heavy investment decision, earn 10,000 sats, spend it at a local coffee shop now with Square that's turned on Bitcoin payments. And so we think a lot of people will earn their first Bitcoin through movement. And there's a lot of other fun things we can build down the road with doctors that maybe want to innovate and incentivize their patients to take certain actions on the preventative side, or get that annual wellness check. So yeah, we're super excited to have that out in our mobile app as well. Um, and yeah, happy to answer questions along with the what that experience looks like. But it's outside the HSA. These are things that's also, we have Noster enabled on our mobile app. We think Noster can provide people that online digital sovereignty with your own cryptographic keys for your identity that you can bring across apps. So maybe you want to share that you completed a challenge, boom, hit our app, hit share to Noster, and now that'll post on your feed. You'll see it on Primal, you'll see it on Damus. It's building on these open source tools, and you can eventually hold your own health record on Noster, right? And have cryptographic keys and share that with who you like, right? It's there's so many areas, particularly in healthcare, where we've just given up our freedom, or we've given up and traded privacy for convenience. And there are the tools out there that we're building on here at Sound HSA. And from day one, we had Noster login. So when people open up and want to get into the Sound HSA app, if you don't have a private key or NSEC, create a Noster account right there. And now you can get started and see all the rest of what Noster has to offer. So we've designed a way to save that step data to Noster to start. right? And I think as we move into other potentially more sensitive data, obviously the HIPAA compliance, SOC 2, all that stuff is on the roadmap for us and super important from a privacy perspective in an area that's also very heavily regulated. But we think that with private relays and private keys, you're not going to have your data in a
Yep.
honeypot like it was with Change Healthcare when 1 out of 3 Americans last year had their healthcare data hacked, right? It's even on the relay, we can't read it. Like if we're maybe hosting the relay or the server, but it's encrypted by your private keys. You have to decrypt it. So there's so many areas and aspects, in healthcare where we really think we're just getting started. But by building on the foundations of open source protocols and tools, Bitcoin, Lightning, Nostr, we can create whole totally new experiences in
Man,
healthcare.
you just kind of, I didn't even think of the Noster angle, but yeah,
Yeah.
what if you could just go to your doctor and your doctor didn't even know your name?
Yeah.
You had your medical profile. And so even if the doctor was storing all these records, you're still not
Mhm.
honeypotted because it's just an account you have for your medical history that's not tied, only you know it. Only you have the private keys. So someone similar to a Bitcoin transaction, right? Like you can look at the blockchain, and we have all these idiots out this week, Ray Dalio and Tucker. For whatever
Yeah.
reason, these guys think Bitcoin's not private because they don't understand that posting one XPub for the Canadian truckers was a total disaster, and just insane amounts of just ignorant comments about privacy on Bitcoin. But it's that concept of I can see the transaction move and see what wallet it came from, what wallet it went to,
Mhm.
but I have no idea
Yeah.
who it's tied to. Your medical records could be exactly the same. Your doctor literally wouldn't even have to know your name. He would just be like, give me, give me your NPub, verify it back. You'd have to sign, right? You sign with your private key to verify that that's your
Mhm.
NPub. Doctor takes it. He goes, okay, great. I have your medical history here, and I don't know your name. I don't know your address. I don't know anything other than this medical profile that's been with me for 25 years, and I know everything that's been done, but that's it. And wow, that I like you kind of just blew my mind thinking about that. Like how amazing that would be. Just the amount of data leakage and everything that would be cut out of the system to have something like that implemented. That would be so cool.
Yeah, and I think, and that's what we're building towards. I mean, the first thing, again, we're focused on is very much the HSA and the health savings account. As we mentioned, there's 40 million accounts. So this is an active market holding $170 billion in value. Half of that sitting in cash. It's just sitting in fiat, not even being invested, right? So we think this is like the low-hanging fruit. Let's get Bitcoin and HSAs. It's something that I think to Bitcoiners is once you realize what the HSA is, yeah, this is obvious, right? I want to say Bitcoin in here, and then kind of all the other stuff and things we're talking about along the lines ultimately tackle huge other major other issues in the healthcare space, and where we've had our own sovereignty taken away, or we have to sign so much paperwork every time you go to the doctor, the same stuff over and over and over again. And yeah, we have a tool, and there was a big hype 8-10 years ago. Maybe Stu, you can speak to this a little bit. I know you were deeper in it, but like the whole blockchain for
It's
healthcare
nauseating.
hype that
We have it now. It's
that
here
that took
now. Like
Yeah.
place.
that is
Yeah.
Noster. Yeah.
Yeah, Brandon, it's
Right.
interesting that you bring that up. Yeah, John's right. So when I was exposed to Bitcoin, it was, and blockchain for health and healthcare was all the rage, right? It's like we're going to put all this data on a blockchain, and most of the time the conversation was not about Bitcoin. Bitcoin was the stodgy old, use case here in the corner, and we've moved on to the shiny objects, right? That
Been
did a disservice,
credits
honestly.
and yeah. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
All the stuff
things.
now. It's just yeah.
Well, patient data, using patient data, controlling your own data, monetizing it to research. I mean, golly, I mean, so much has happened in our world since, that concept was even discussed. But, tracking, medical supplies and in devices, with provenance on the blockchain, just a lot of buzzwords that people use to think, okay, there's a play here and we're going to put everything in healthcare on the blockchain. And nobody, I mean, I would go to conferences that were blockchain for healthcare type things, then people would say, they would ask you to raise a hand, audience of 1,000 people, Bitcoin or blockchain. And like, what ignorance just is fundamental in that question, and people actually would raise their hands and like, choose a side. It was just, that's just where we were, right?
Yeah.
And so I laugh a little bit because of, I look back on that, but I think you're right. We've come full circle, to the implications of, and what, these second and third layer solutions that can, that on top of Bitcoin, that can fundamentally help us think differently about the way we do health here in the US. And, we use the term sound, sound money, sound health, sound money, interchangeably, because we think healthcare is broken because the money's broken. John mentioned the $5 trillion, price tag that we spend on healthcare every year. We don't know what anything costs, right? And so we've got to get back to a point where we have somewhat of a true marketplace for health goods and services, value for value. And Bitcoin can address a lot of that. And people start saving for health goods and services. They start walking into a orthopedic clinic or an outpatient clinic, and they say, what's your cash pay schedule? Kind of what Crowd Health is started to do, at scale. It's like, no, I want to know, I'm going to pay out of pocket. What's the best that you can do? And places like Surgery Center of Oklahoma, they publish all of their pricing on their website. So, all in, all up, what you're going to pay for a total knee or shoulder arthroscopy before you ever go into that facility. And I believe that we have that opportunity, that that Bitcoin can provide a deflationary pressure on an overly inflated market segment. 20% of GDP is spent on healthcare. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. And we don't know what it costs.
To be fair, we
So
know
yeah,
what it costs. It's whatever the insurance is willing to pay for.
yes. What is the true? Yeah, what is the true cost? Like, what would that true cost?
But even the hospitals don't
No.
know their own costs, right? They don't know the
Yeah,
cost of production.
yeah,
And so yeah, it's ended up being more and more, bigger health systems and more centralizing forces and bigger insurance companies negotiating with each other, and ultimately the individuals left out and having to, foot the bill. And
yeah,
so we're optimistic that over time, and even we're seeing this now, even Trump was floating, hey, and because the subsidies for the insurance marketplace are going away, maybe we'll just put that money directly in people's HSA
yeah.
accounts. And that ultimately, as the government can't pay for this, they will want more people to just pay for their own health care, which could involve opening up who's eligible for an HSA. And so for us, something that's been floated and that we'd love to see happen, and on the policy front, is Rothifying the HSA, right? In a way where anyone could be eligible. You got to pay taxes on the way in, like a Roth, fine, but now you get the upside, right? You're getting the growth of the Bitcoin in your account. You're not having to pay capital gains when you spend it. And so that would also open up a lot more people who've already been savvy enough to maybe ditch health insurance, are in a position where they're not having their premiums paid by their employer. But ultimately, there's still 150 million people in the US on commercial sponsored, employer sponsored healthcare plans, right? So this is a huge part of the population that, and so for us, like, can we meet people where they are? And maybe you're at a company, your company's paying your premiums, but you don't like the HSA that's offered. You haven't even looked at it because there's no investment options. But you can, maybe you're getting a match from your company. If you contribute, you can transfer over to Sound HSA and buy Bitcoin, and boom, now you have your Bitcoin HSA that you can bring beyond your employer relationship and that you take with you. So, um, that's where the education is huge, and it's just showing, and I think within this healthcare space that there has been a movement towards more of a free market. There is a free market medical association, for example, that I'm a part of, and Stu mentioned Surgery Center of Oklahoma and a lot of other leaders who have noticed this, decades ago and wanted to just provide the service. But it's harder and harder for those clinics to compete, especially single doctors, and they just get squeezed out right at different markets. And that's where the whole messaging that I've had for DPC docs and dentists, which is, if you want to stay independent and you can have a much better work-life balance, you're not going to have the burnout you're going to have in a system. Instead of 2,000 patients that you're going to see as a primary care doctor, if you work at a big health system every year, you have 7 minutes to spend with them on average. You can have 300-400 patients and have a successful business and do the concierge. And even in an area where you think no one would pay in Bitcoin, one of the doctors, a doctor in my hometown I'm working with, he just had his first person pay in Bitcoin because of the discount. And he's offering a 10% discount if you pay in Bitcoin. This person wasn't necessarily a Bitcoiner. They went into Cash App and bought Bitcoin to get the member to pay the bill. So a little bit different, but people, incentives move people, right? Okay, I'm going to want to save 10% on this bill. I'll figure out how to get some Bitcoin, and the tools are out there, right? Cash App, Strike, River, go get Bitcoin. And if you want to spend it now, you can have the value. So that's where I think it's both sides, right? The merchant adoption that you guys are helping people do at Sovereign. But ultimately, the merchants are individuals and making those types of Bitcoin decisions and how to stack in the treasury, but then also attracting that Bitcoin consumer who is more savvy, who is understanding and asking the question of what is the price of the service and what is the quality, which is ultimately what business should be. And that has been for a long time. And in any industry in the US has gotten furthest away from the truth is healthcare for sure. And it often is slowest to move. So when we talk about Bitcoin at these events, there actually isn't so much pushback. It's just like, oh, that's interesting. Like, okay, I didn't really think about that, but not that crazy. Like 17 years into Bitcoin, right? This isn't just 8, 7, 8, 9 years in with the institutions adopting. Like, really, we think this is the right time for Sound HSA and other Bitcoin products that are getting adopted by institutions and finding ways, and especially for that $170 billion that's sitting in HSA accounts and half that's in cash. Like, that's not going to be there. Sorry. If you have dollars in your HSA and it isn't even invested in the S&P 500, good luck 20, 30 years from now. Like, it's crazy, right? Because the time horizons are really long in health.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
no,
go ahead,
Stu.
Brandon.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I think to echo John's point about, made me think about how we use the HSA again and how it's marketed to the population. It's like, get the tax advantaged, contribution or with an employer tax free contribution behind payroll and then spend, right? It's like contribute and spend. No one ever talks about how to really maximize because we've gotten in such a frenzy in society, and to be fair, a lot of folks don't have the ability to contribute a max contribution on an annual basis to an account like an HSA. But I think we should start teaching them that they need to prioritize it, right? That it can be a powerful tool for their families and themselves down the road to not spend out of it. How about allocate, contribute, and save, and do it in an asset that we know is the best performing asset over the last 16 years, and we believe over time. We have Kager back on the educational piece. We have Kager calculators on our website. It'll be a little retooled by the time this podcast airs. We will have relaunched our website where people can go on and play with assumptions. Right? We talk about at a 25% CAGR for Bitcoin over the next 20 years is if a family maxed out the 2026 family contribution max, which is 8,750. That's over $3 million in US denominated terms, right? But I mean, and that's conservative. Like, if we believe that 25% CAGR, will be kind of maybe the bottom, at least over the next number of years for Bitcoin's appreciation, that changes the family tree. I mean, Bitcoin does that already, but doing it in a way like that, you think about, okay, I can allocate, maybe I don't need to allocate for 20 years. Maybe I can allocate, for 10 years, and that'll be enough to insulate my family against a catastrophic, health issue down the road. So again, it's huge. We don't want to contribute and spend. You can do that, certainly can do that, but we want to contribute and save if we can.
Or certainly
If you need some dollars in the short term to spend,
yes.
you can keep some in dollars and put most of it in Bitcoin. And that's for our early customers. That's what we're seeing. It's over 80%, allocation into Bitcoin. So maybe you'll keep some fiat for now, or you have some horizon, something coming up where you might need to spend, but the majority of it, you're saving long term in Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's health savings account, not health spending account.
That's right.
So they have a flex,
and people get it confused. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Go
they
ahead,
have
Brandon.
an FSA, which is a flex spending account, which you should be using for the spending portion of things.
Right. And that's use it or lose it, or as people get the HSA and FSA confused,
Yeah.
flexible spending account, very different than the health savings account. And that just goes to show how many different arrangements there are out there. But as a company, you can get creative, and a lot of businesses are. Um, they're doing self-insured, right, at a certain scale. They're not hiring TPA. They're doing a lot of, really the negotiating and getting coverage and things for their own employees to cut out some of the bloat that's traditional on the whole employer side. But it starts with the individual, right, and making that decision that's best for you and your family. And Bitcoin has that ultimate scarcity, digital scarcity of 21 million that we haven't really known in the physical world before. And other than maybe our health and our time, right, on this earth, and it is ultimately scarce. And so there's a lot of overlap, I think, between these different concepts and ideas. And ultimately, if you have that savings in Bitcoin, you can reduce some of that future uncertainty, which is the whole reason why people got health insurance in the first place, right? Because you want to reduce future health and financial uncertainty. But when you have this triumvirate, you have the payer of healthcare that's different from the consumer of healthcare and the merchant or the supplier of healthcare, you end up with a whole host of moral hazard, supplier induced demand, all these other issues that we see particularly in the US healthcare system, but all over the world. It's just a different flavor. And thankful that at least in the US, though, we do have this type of account and the HSA that we can take advantage of. And we have people on our mobile app. Anyone can use the mobile app, especially with Nostr and Lightning. You can log in around the world, have access to, even now with the wallet, you can save self-custody in Bitcoin. And maybe it is helpful for you to just have another wallet that isn't your main spending wallet, but it's saying, even if it's not tax advantaged either, this is my health. This is where I'm going to put in some sats for my health. And if I do need to pay a doctor, I do need to tap in. I have it in a separate place, and maybe that we hope that's helpful for people. And we saw in our challenge last year, we had folks in Nigeria and in Switzerland and all over the world that found us and wanted some sats for steps. And so we're excited to see internationally who else is interested in Bitcoin, which we know there are, and health together.
That's awesome. And talking about those misaligned incentives, I mean, how many of these doctors that have to see all these patients just feel overwhelmed and then ultimately steer people to the most expensive product or the most reimbursable product, not even necessarily what's best for the customer, but it's best for them financially. And my wife and I, to your point about the concierge, we pay a decent chunk of extra money a year to have a doctor that we know is going to, for our son, our pediatrician, that we know is going to take the time with our son, give the full care, and not push products onto us that are being pushed onto her. And we are definitely willing to pay more for that because it's of high value to us. And I'm hoping by the time my son has to go to an actual non-pediatric doctor that I will have orange pilled them, but we'll see. But I mean, that value alignment is 100% there. And I can't even imagine back in my former fiat life, I dealt a lot with hospitals that took like a doctor group that was independent, integrated them into a hospital, and then ultimately it didn't work out. And so it ended up on my desk handling defaulted loans, distressed debt, because it's just really, really hard to take a big group of independent doctors, shove them into a hospital system, and then expect things to work out. The doctors aren't used to it. The hospital system's not used to it. Expectations are not aligned at all. It all sounds great at close when everyone gets a nice little bonus and boost of cash, but 6 months, 18 months later, the operational, the foundation of what was built in these two separate systems merging together just becomes an impossibility. They collide with each other. Or what we sadly saw most of the time was a lot of these doctors just retire, and then the remaining doctors were just zombies walking around hating their life. And it's like that, and it's all from these misaligned incentives. And
Yeah.
taking something like Sound HSA and realigning these incentives, excuse me, um, would just make the experience for everyone so much better. And this sound money, sound health, it's even the experience of just not being miserable when you interact with the healthcare system as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's that basic service, and yeah, doctors have also gotten the short end of the stick. They're the ones providing the service, and they only account for 8% of that $5 trillion is going to the
Yeah.
actual physicians, right? We have this, you've probably seen the chart, the 3,000+% growth of administrators compared to a couple 100% in doctors since 1971, since we went on a fiat standard. And so we're absolutely a big part of our mission is connecting with those doctors and helping them see how Bitcoin can strengthen their business. And maybe Stu, you can speak about what we've launched on the nonprofit side with the Bitcoin Physicians Network for any docs that might be listening to the
Yeah,
show.
that's an important point. So John and I felt it was necessary to have a landing spot for physicians who have adopted Bitcoin or are thinking about Bitcoin, either in their practice, personal life, balance sheet, et cetera. So we launched with a couple other physicians, or I should say two physicians, Bitcoin Physicians Network. It's a 501(c)(6) based out of Minnesota. And we are in the process. If you go to bitcoinphysiciansnetwork.org, you'll see that we've got
That we'll put that
some
show
information.
notes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
put that in. We'll put that in the show notes.
Put that in the show.
Yeah, you can see that. We've actually got a map there where people, physicians, can kind of plot their location, and if people want to find them, whether they accept Bitcoin or, they're incorporating Bitcoin at some point in their business or personal life as a savings mechanism. We're going to grow that, and so any physician that's interested in joining that, it is a society. Our hope is that it will be a physician-led society. We'll have content, education. There'll be opportunities for physicians to come together to discuss best practices as it relates to the intersection of Bitcoin and health. And we really feel that as a nonprofit, that gives us an advocacy platform to go, to places like DC. John and I were in DC for the Bitcoin policy meeting last summer. We'll do that again. We think that there's an opportunity, certainly with the current administration and hopefully beyond, to bring meaningful legislation, continue to do that for Bitcoin, and the implications for health are tremendous. And so Bitcoin Physicians Network is a great opportunity for physicians all over to plug in, to become members, and to help grow that society. And we think it's going to be something special. So
I'm so glad you're doing that. When I was in Prague last year, one of the panels I was sitting on, we were the concept was sort of government overreach, bureaucracy, and how do we push back against that as a community. And one of the things I was talking about was forming groups like this, like CEOs of companies need to get together, doctors accepting Bitcoin need to get together, merchants accepting Bitcoin we need to start forming these societies and these groups and these clubs, committees, organizations, whatever you want to call them, where
yeah,
we have these people that can stand together and say no. Like you look at the COVID disaster, and how
yeah,
was it that 99% of businesses in America all did the same thing? I mean, you had to really be a trailblazing CEO, or like the CEO of My Pillow, and just be out on your own little island anyways. But like, what if some of those people, what if some of the heads of institutions had a coalition where they're like, basically everyone was threatened with the money printer, your cheap credit, et cetera, all gets cut off if you say no to this. And it's like, well, what if there was actually a group of people with some pushback that said, no, we're not going along with this. So you can hurt us financially, but we're going to hurt you back. We're not going along with this. We're going to provide a reprieve from this oppression and these sort of things. We're going to have open workplaces. We're going to have, our own thoughts, our own way of doing things. And yeah, but sticking together and having that group forms a much stronger bond and a willingness to accept a little bit of pain. Like at the end of the day, yeah, you as a business leader, as a CEO of a company, you would have had to accept some pain. Things would have hurt. But if you're
Yep.
doing it with 20 other CEOs, that's much more
Mhm.
stomachable than, I don't think that's a word, but then if you had to go out on an island on your own and just say, I'm planting my own flag, I'm going to bear this burden on my own. And it is so important to have that camaraderie and that togetherness to
Mhm.
be able to push back from the inevitable overreach and pressure that we know is going to come as they lose control of the monetary system and their control and their subsequent control on society through said monetary system. So I appreciate you guys
Yep.
doing that.
Yeah, and
Well,
we
well said. Yeah.
Yeah, no, very well said, Brandon. And that's the benefit of Bitcoin as a redundant payment rail because we did see doctors getting debanked and being able to not have your business miss a step and just continue to accept Bitcoin for your services you're providing, whether that's through Zaprite or another service that makes a product that makes it really easy, right? This isn't hard. You maybe spend 30 minutes and get set up and you're good to go. You can accept Bitcoin, you can accept lightning payments, and your business doesn't miss a beat if, yeah, the government continues, maybe it has an overreach in the future or doesn't like the way you're practicing medicine. So having the societies you mentioned, that's really physician led. We have 4 docs on the board to start. Three of whom will be speaking at an event we're actually putting
Yeah.
on at Bitcoin Park in Nashville on April 8th. So if anyone in your audience is in Nashville or really in healthcare and wants to be there, we'd love to see you at Bitcoin Park. We're making the case for Bitcoin in healthcare. It's going to be a half day forum, about 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., including some time to network and meet other folks in the healthcare industry who are interested in Bitcoin. Because even taking that step, and I've talked to a lot of doctors over the last few years who might still be working in a bigger hospital or health system, but they're fully orange pilled. They might not have the opportunity to really introduce Bitcoin in their organization with what's going with how big these organizations are, but they might be thinking about leaving. And as you said, instead of just retiring, what if you could still take your skills now and build up your own business and have that be really easy? But you might have some questions on how to do that. We think BPN can really be that spot for doctors not only to plant a flag, and we have a map where you can find kind of like beef maps. Where can I find a local doc? Where can I find a doctor, or maybe a telemedicine service that's accepting Bitcoin, and you really get to know that doctor? Or even, hey, I'm a Bitcoin doc, but I'm working still in a health system. That's also really valuable because these institutions are huge right now, and I think we've maybe probably seen the peak centralization when I was doing strategy consulting, 10 years ago. Like there was just so much of the work is just we're consolidating, we're changing the sign over here, but how can we actually integrate the services across the state, across 8, 10, 15 hospital systems? I mean, these are massive projects and undertakings that ultimately miss out on that locality or understanding who am I really serving here? What are we doing? So there's just been so much of that in healthcare, and we're excited to see, who wants to be a part of BPN from that perspective and really physician led, and but helping push it to the next level because we know docs are busy in their everyday life, and you shouldn't have to earn your money twice, right? That's the whole thing with fiat and with inflation is you earn your money as a doctor, you think you'd be fine. Well, now I got to go turn around and invest it and this and that. You got doctor investor societies. It's just everything's gotten so, I guess, and I don't know if this is a word either, but fiatized is what
Totally
I
a
would
word.
say, right? It's just like, man, we have such high time preference and around all these different aspects. So, I appreciate you. Yeah, that's cool that you spoke about that in Prague because I think we will see more of these and should just go ahead and do
Yeah.
things and start and see who will come out of the woodworks and be like, yeah, this really aligns with everything I've been thinking about.
Yeah. And last question, kind of as we first of all, if you're a doctor, physician, or in this space or anything, definitely reach out. And if you're able to check out the Bitcoin Park event, you should do it just to go see Bitcoin Park, but also because John and Stu will be there, and it's a good event. But one of the things I've really been kind of thinking about, and um, as we go through kind of whatever this drawdown is, there's just so many angry people and upset people, and people that thought they were somehow going to just buy half a Bitcoin, and they're this next bull run there they would just be sitting on an island somewhere and life would take care of itself. And just this sort of general malaise and sort of disdain for life because people aren't producing things, because they're counting on Bitcoin to sort of bail them out of the situation that they've put themselves in, that they've allowed their life to be. And instead of introspecting and everything, they want to look out and blame Bitcoin for not going to $800,000 so that they could, move out of whatever situation they're in and onto the next thing. But at the end of the day, as Bitcoiners, it's really important to be providing value and to be adding value and to be creating things that do provide value
Yeah.
to people. And so anyone that I see, and what I'm hoping to do at Sovereign, and listen, the future is unknown, things are uncertain, not everything's guaranteed to be a success. That's part of the risk of being an entrepreneur, and part
Yes.
of putting your capital at risk, and why the labor worker people will never understand what actual capitalism, real capitalism, not this fake crony capitalism we currently live in, and have lived in for a very long time. Um, but one, how long has it taken you guys to get this going? These journeys are not simple steps. You just flip a light switch on. Things are great. And and two, what was sort of your mind frame, your mindset as you got into this? I really want to start kind of highlighting, because so many of these business owners I talk about their business, how they're integrating Bitcoin, whatever, but I don't really talk about the mindset and the dedication it requires to undertake something, and
Wow.
that you have to have these things, and your life is going to be miserable if you sit there, don't take agency of it, and are waiting
Right.
for Bitcoin's price to do something, or you're
Yeah.
waiting for some sort of politician to pass some law to make things better for you. Like, that's just not going to
Yeah.
happen. And I'm going to try going forward to put a little more focus on this. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about your journeys, your mind frame, and how you looked at all of this as you, and how long it took just to even get to this point.
Yeah. I'll start, if that's okay. So I've been a commissioned salesperson my entire life, and I watched my father as a young child get up every day at 4:30 to go to work. So I knew something very early. I had the gift my father gave me, who actually recently passed away, that you got to get up early, which speaks to work ethic. And then you've got to find an opportunity that you can be competent at and that you enjoy, hopefully enjoy, that you can add value to the marketplace. Period. You've got to find a way that you can bring value to the marketplace, and that question is under a lot of scrutiny, obviously, in current times with artificial intelligence and what's coming. Um, but I knew that I had to get up very early, and I had to outwork everybody that I competed against to get where I wanted to go. I was very, very early on was exposed to well-defined goals and setting goals, like to the point I wrote them out on a piece of paper, Brandon, and taped them to the steering wheel in my car as I drove around the mid South making sales calls on hospitals and doctors' offices.
Love it.
And so every time I got in the car, I was looking at those goals. And it's funny, I go back and look at some of those goals, those written goals, and how trivial some of them were to a young 20, late 20s guy compared to now and how life has played out. Um, Relative to the entrepreneurial thing, most of the time it doesn't work out, right? It just statistically, most of them don't. The lion's share of them don't. But that doesn't mean that the pursuit and the journey is not worth the risk to try. And when you find something like Bitcoin and it changes your life because you realize you start asking some very tough questions and hard questions of yourself, like, what am I trying to solve for? Like, what is this technology really going to do for my life and the people I care about? You start thinking about ways you can contribute. And for the longest time in this space, I struggled with finding a way to contribute. I wanted so badly to contribute to this space with the expertise that I had gained. And when we started thinking about Sound HSA 3 years ago, that was my opportunity. I'm like, I can do this. I want to give something back. I think this product needs to exist. I've used an HSA myself. I know how the product works. I know how to maximize it. Obviously, in better understanding Bitcoin, I know the healthcare space, and really that was kind of the engine that started that for me. And then, again, as I spoke to earlier, the regulatory environment just was not ready for the product. And sometimes it's just timing on the things that we can pursue as entrepreneurs and starting our own businesses. And then again, when John and I got connected, I'm like, okay, there's some things we have to check to make sure that we can find certain pieces. But if we can, I think we can do something really special for millions of people potentially, and for Bitcoiners, and maybe, just maybe, it's our way of giving back to the community, and to so many people that have helped me understand this technology, have allowed me into a space to learn, and so, and again, and that's my personal story. But I would just offer, you've got to try, you've got to clearly define your goals, and then just go for it. Surround yourself with really talented people, and find an opportunity that you think fills a need. And it doesn't have to be teched out; it can be very manual, even in today's age. But it's you and your horsepower, mental and physical. So I'll pause there.
No, that's fantastic. That's exactly uh, what I'm looking for, getting in the minds of folks doing this. So perfect. John, how about yourself?
Yeah, no, that was really well said, Stu. And for me, I would say, having gone to the first adopting Bitcoin conference in El Salvador in November of 2021, I was still working in the medical supply industry. They were starting calling people back into the office. I'd already gotten used to a bit of a nomadic lifestyle and the freedom that comes along with Bitcoin, and not necessarily needing to be rooted in one physical place. And no one was talking about Bitcoin in healthcare, and it makes sense why, right? Like, hey, we're talking about financial products or mining, energy, maybe circular economy stuff over in El Zonte, and getting to experience Bitcoin, using it, spending it, and really seeing the builders up on the stage and saying, okay, yeah, you can just go and build it. And if no one's talking about Bitcoin in healthcare yet, then we just need to create it, or need to find the people who are aligned. Clearly, it's a big sector of the economy. Um, but no one was talking about Bitcoin in healthcare. And so, since really that moment, and now it's 4.5 years ago, said, okay, I want to bring Bitcoin into healthcare. And I think these are both big enough areas where up until now, people might say, oh, why would you need Bitcoin in healthcare? But I think as we dug into it over the last hour here, and as you spend time in your personal life, you realize it's super important. And there's so many issues or challenges and market inefficiencies out there that you just need to build it and create it. So yeah, I think the mindset, just trying to add value, as Stu said. And for me, having a consulting background too, and you doing consulting, like, it's having those business conversations with another business owner is really valuable. And how do I take the step of being a personal Bitcoiner to actually integrating it in a business, and having the operations and compliance and strategy that goes along with it. So yeah, for us, we were able to stand this up pretty quickly and find the right partners. Where our goal was to get it out, have the HSA live by the end of the year. We onboarded our beta customers at the end of December, and have been onboarding our wait list over the last couple of months. And now we're really stoked to be fully live and running, and looking for people who want to open up their Bitcoin HSA account. I think we'll continue to innovate and move quick where we can, particularly the mobile app. We had Move to Earn that was live last year's Vegas conference. So that was a couple months after starting the company. We had a mobile app, and had a way of paying people Bitcoin right away from completing a
I
challenge.
think I
So
actually have
I
that
think we'll
right
keep,
here. I think. There we go. Still got it on my
yeah,
desk there.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. You were,
Yeah, yeah.
heck yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we're excited to keep building, and yeah, just working on something that we're passionate about, and connecting with other amazing people who really deeply care, particularly in an area like health,
Yep.
that is very much life and death in many scenarios. You're caring for loved ones, and the process, particularly end of life care now too, is extremely painful in the U.S. Right now. So there's so many areas to tackle, and welcome anyone that as Stu mentioned, everyone, bring your experience, right? Bring whatever you can to the table. There probably is a way, or things you've learned where if it even touches Bitcoin in some aspect, we'll be better off as a community. So
Awesome. I love it. That is a perfect note to go out on. So, I think you guys will be launching the week before this podcast airs. So, where do you want to send people to check out Sound HSA and you guys personally?
yeah, so you can go to soundhsa.com, click sign up, and you'll go to our web app. It's $300 to as an annual fee, one time $50 setup fee to start the account. And you can go through the onboarding steps. Feel free to schedule a call with us. You've got links for that as well. If you have questions, as we mentioned, don't hesitate to reach out to support at soundhsa.com. You can find me on X and Noster. We'll also be doing a weekly webinar, as Stu mentioned, that will be streaming also to LinkedIn at the Bitcoin Yogi. And yeah, excited to see everyone coming up here. We'll be at BitBlock Boom. We're doing a run for Hal. If anyone here is going to be in Dallas there that Saturday morning, we'll be doing a 5K, raising funds for ALS. And then we'll also be at the Bitcoin conference in Vegas. So a lot of exciting action coming up in the Bitcoin world. And yeah, if you're in Chicago as well, opening up a Bitcoin co-working space and restaurant here, Chicago Bitcoin Collective, Fork and Coin. Excited to see you out there, Brandon. It's an untapped Bitcoin market, whereas where Stu's located, and I'll hand off to you, Stu, in Nashville, has been one of the focal points of really U.S. Bitcoin growth. And so excited to see what we can bring to Chicago together.
Yeah.
Brandon.
Are you, by the way, you're a member, right, at the Bitcoin Collective or no? Okay.
Yeah, one of the
Oh,
co-founders.
that's
yeah.
right. Yeah, you're a
So
yeah,
absolutely
sorry.
a member.
Yeah.
I I was the second non-co-founder member. So yeah,
Excited to have you
That's
on board.
awesome.
me too.
Yeah, Brandon, you can find me on Twitter, on Noster, LinkedIn. As John mentioned, we've got a pretty heavy event schedule over the next 60 days. We're super pumped to be in a lot of places. We're going to put out a lot of social content. Again, please join us on April 8th here in Nashville, beautiful Nashville, Tennessee, at Bitcoin Park for Bitcoin and healthcare. And yeah, just a ton of opportunities to plug in to what we're doing. And yeah, if nothing else, participate in some of our upcoming global challenges. We're going to continue to do those to help build awareness around Bitcoin and health, and anybody can participate in those. So we'd love to have you as a customer, but we look forward to hopefully connecting with as many people as we can as we go down this road. So
Awesome. And just
thanks so much, man.
your name, Stu, on all the socials if people want to.
Stuart Lackey, my full name,
Okay.
but yeah, that's usually how you'll see me on social.
Any relation to John Lackey, the pitcher?
Yes,
Oh
actually,
wow. Okay.
probably.
All right. I was
Yeah,
not expecting.
not the pitcher,
Oh.
not the pitcher.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. This is great conversation and an area and just back to what I was talking about in terms of getting started in doing something. There's just infinite amounts of area where you can just go do something and then just plug Bitcoin into it. You can just add Bitcoin to
Yeah.
whatever you're doing. So don't feel like you have to be a dev or a vibe coder or an engineer or a hardware builder. Like there's just any job you can think of, you can just go do that and then integrate Bitcoin into it. So
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
tons of opportunities out there. As always, I'm Plebe Anon on Noster. You can find me on LinkedIn, Brandon Karplus, my real Christian name. And you can follow Sovereign on X at Sovereign X, or just search Sovereign, SOVREIG, on Sovereign without the first E, on all the socials, and then sovereign.io is the website. So, Stu, John, thank you guys so much. This was a pleasure.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks so much.